Good morning, and welcome to day 28 of our study. We're going to be in Mark's Gospel, chapter 7, verses 24 down through 30. One of my favorite shows during the 1970s was WKRP in Cincinnati. And my favorite character on that show was Les Nessman. He was the news announcer. And the great thing about Les is he really didn't know what he was doing and he would make mistakes, but he would never admit those mistakes. He used to call those little Mexican dogs chihuahuas, would never admit that he was mispronouncing it. Called the great golfer Chichi Rodriguez, used to pronounce his name Chai Chai Rodriguez. But my favorite scene ever is where he's on the radio and he's announcing that a giant lizard is ravaging the East Coast. Now, one of the disc jockeys comes over and puts the mute on the mic so no one can hear him, and he says, Les, the B is out on the printer. It's blizzard. There's a blizzard ravaging the East Coast. In one of these great comic moments, then, Les Nessman just looks at him, pauses, gets back on the air, and continues to talk about the giant lizard. He will not admit he's wrong. Now, that's amusing. It's not amusing in this passage because we see Jesus says something and Jesus is wrong in what he says. Now, this might shock you. And Jesus gets into an argument. And Jesus, he's been in lots of arguments, but he always wins them. This argument, he loses. He loses. And the reason he loses is because he's wrong. And we wonder about this passage, about what he said, why he said it, why he lost this argument. Let's take a look at it. We're in Mark 7, 24 down through 30. And let's look at what it says. Verse 24. Jesus left that place and went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it, yet he could not keep his presence secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an impure spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. So here we have this woman. Now, you should know she's Gentile. Where Jesus is at this point, he's out of Israel, he's in Gentile country. And this woman comes to Jesus and she begs him, can you heal my daughter? Now, the problem is that she's crossing some pretty important barriers. First of all, in that culture, women didn't speak directly to men they did not know. And a Gentile woman would never come and speak directly to a Jewish man. This just wasn't done, especially an important Jewish man, a rabbi like Jesus. So she was breaking a lot of rules in that culture because she was desperate. Her daughter badly needed to be healed, and she heard that this Jesus could heal. Do you blame her? I would do the same thing if I were in her sandals. But look at Jesus' response, because let's be honest, his response is awful. Look what he says to her, verse 27. This is after she comes and says, will you heal my daughter? Verse 27. First, let the children eat all they want, he told her. It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Who is Jesus calling dogs in this parable? Well, in this metaphor, the woman and her daughter are the dogs. Jesus is calling them dogs. These weren't like pet puppy dogs that we have. These were considered unclean, mangy animals. So why did Jesus treat her like this? Why did he refuse to help her? Was it because she was a Gentile? Did Jesus really feel this way about Gentiles? He seems to be saying exactly that here. Did he see Gentiles as second-class people who didn't deserve to be healed? Let me ask you, do you know any Gentiles? Yeah, that's us. We're the Gentiles. Does Jesus feel this way about us? But if he really felt that way, how come earlier he's healing a Gentile who had all these demons in him? Yeah, that was a Gentile that Jesus healed. He's healed Gentiles before, so why all of a sudden is he saying, I can't give the children's bread to these dogs? Now the woman answers him, and I got to tell you, she wins the argument. Jesus has never lost an argument before. He never loses another one after this. This one he loses. Look at verse 28. Lord, this is after he said to her, hey, I can't take the children's bread and give it to the dogs. Verse 28, Lord, she replied, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Even they have something. Her argument is, the dogs get something. All right, maybe the meal wasn't prepared for them. Maybe the Jewish Messiah was sent just to the Jews, but can't we have some scraps? Can't we get anything? Can't you just take a minute and heal my daughter? Yes, she's a Gentile, but can't you just take a minute and do this? All right. How does Jesus respond to that argument? Verses 29 and 30. He told her, for such a reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. She went home and found her child lying on the bed and the demon gone. Jesus heals her. Jesus agrees. You know what? You've got a good argument. The dogs should get a little something. All right. So what do we make of all this? Think about what it took for her to come and to plead with Jesus like this. She knew the Messiah is for the Jews. I'm not a Jew, but she was desperate. And Jesus heals the daughter. But why did he put her through all this? Why did he make her go through everything that she had to? Why did he make her beg like that? Well, let's suppose that Jesus had just said, okay, you asked, fine, here you go, waves his hand, and off she goes. Would the woman have been grateful? Of course she would have. Her daughter was healed. So why was Jesus making her do this? See, I think Jesus saw something. By the way, Jesus did lose this argument. But let me ask you this. Was Jesus trying to win the argument? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think he was putting her through her paces. I think he wanted to see, what kind of faith do you have? What kind of faith muscles do you have? Are you willing to fight for this a little bit? Because if he had just said, fine, your daughter's healed, that would have been great. But Jesus recognized something in this woman. He recognized the seeds of faith. Now I want to see those seeds developed. And how do you develop anything? How do you develop muscles? How do you develop skill? How do you develop any strength? By struggling, by doing what's hard. And I think that's what Jesus was putting her through. You see, here's the thing. Here's how we think prayer works. God, I present you my list, and you give me the stuff. Seems like a good system. But what does that make us? It makes us just entitled. Eventually, it'll turn us into spoiled children. I don't think that's what God wants. I think what God wants is for us to be strong. And the way we are strong is if we struggle and we keep going. It's the struggle. It's the striving. It's the wrestling with prayer. It's the wrestling with faith. That's what makes us strong. And I think that's what Jesus was doing here. If you've ever seen what they do to train Navy SEALs, it's brutal. I actually got to see some Navy SEALs get trained very, very briefly, and I thought, I don't want to be a Navy SEAL. It's hard. And one of the things that I read that they do with Navy SEALs is they tell them, all right, men, we're going to run 5 miles. And at the end of this 5 miles, you're going to see the truck. And the truck will take you back to the base. So you run the 5 miles to where the truck is parked. You have to touch the bumper. And as soon as you touch the bumper, you can get in the truck. Now, that's what they tell these Navy SEALs. Now, if you've ever done any running, a lot of it is very psychological. Runners don't just go out and say, I'm going to run until I get tired. They say, I'm going to run this far today. I'm going to run 2 miles. I'm going to run 3 miles, what have you. And it's a very psychological thing, because if you say, I'm going to run 2 miles, the interesting thing is, as you're getting towards the end of that 2 miles, you are exhausted. You are tired. If you had started out by saying, I'm going to run 4 miles, you'd get to 2 miles, no problem. Psychologically, your brain is telling you you're almost done. It's just about time to rest. We can quit. So here are these Navy SEALs that are told you're going to run 5 miles. You're going to slap the bumper of the truck and get in. So as they see the truck, as they see we're almost there, they're getting exhausted. They're tired. And right when they're just about to reach out and touch the truck drives off and goes another couple miles. And they have to keep running. And that's very discouraging, because they were thinking we had ourselves programmed, we had ourselves geared to run 5 miles. Now we got to run 7. But here's why they do that. They want you tough. They want you tough enough that you're going to keep going even when you think it's going to be this far. No, you got to keep going. That's what makes us tough, that struggle. Let me ask you right now, are times hard? Oh my goodness, we've never been through anything like this. This isn't even like a war. Now, a war is very dangerous, has very real struggles. And I would rather be in this than a war, but this is all unknown stuff. We don't know what next week is going to be like. We don't know how this is all going to resolve. This is hard. And there's only 2 ways to come out of this. Either we're going to fall apart completely, or we're going to come out even stronger. We're going to come out even more thankful to God. We're going to come out even more dependent on God. We're going to come out even more sure in our faith. Why? Because the struggle makes us strong. Be strong, stay positive, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.